Good afternoon, Melanie. Melanie, where are you coming from today?
From Ontario, Canada.
Canada. All right. This is Dr. Brent Turvey, Dr. Aurelio Coronado, and Melanie Lambert from Ontario, Canada. Oh my God, I almost just mispronounced Canada. That's how bad I felt.
What they're gonna have to say.
Okay, I don't know. So Aurelio is a forensic psychologist and a colleague of mine. I'm a forensic criminologist and criminal profiler. And Melanie is a forensic investigator from Canada who is also in our residency program.
Yeah.
Melanie, would you like to tell us a little bit about what it is you do and the residency program you're in? Just real quick.
Sure. I am the director of case analysis for a not-for-profit organization in Canada. It's called Please Bring Me Home. We take on cold cases at the family's request of missing people, and we investigate them. We have a whole team of investigators and researchers, and we just work the cases as best we can and try to bring people home. As Dr. Turvey said, I'm also in the residency, and so I'm working cases alongside you, and we're working things like domestic violence cases and accidental deaths and homicides.
That's right. So a lot of, I think one of our residents worked a sexual homicide in Alaska. You've worked a couple of a wrongful death and some other cases out of Kansas. And right now we've started our second round. We're doing sexual assaults, but all of them intersect with issues related to relationships, domestic violence, and secondary victimization. I think that's the piece that's often missing.
Of course.
So, and Aurelio, tell us about your experience with that a little bit.
Well, I work gender-based crimes, especially vulnerable population like children and immigrants, indigenous population, and I work to try to bring context evidence to the investigation in terms of understanding not just the behavior in terms of clinical, like if someone has like a mental illness or whatever, a mental health problem, but more about the context in terms of where they live, how they react to that environment, and at the end, what could be the motivation around these type of crimes.
Right, and context includes things like, let's say someone who has a long history of being the victim of domestic violence. Maybe they've got drug addiction.
They live in a place where police don't do their work.
Oh my gosh, where the police don't even respond.
Yeah.
Or
like in the world.
Like in Las Vegas.
People like live in the world.
Like in the United States, everywhere in the United States.
Yeah.
But the other context people forget about is poverty. That's the other one.
Poverty, of course, and racism, of course.
Absolutely. So I want to talk about this because this is the dimension that is often neglected. There is a big problem of people. Right now, we have people we're just coming out of sort of the shut-in moment of the pandemic. We've been in lockdown over the last year and a half, and there's these attempts to come out. And there's two parts of this problem that are related to domestic violence. The first part is that during the lockdowns, people of different contexts experienced an increase, an uptick in domestic violence and abuse at home in different contexts. Let's talk about that just a little bit.
Yeah, well, I think there was numerous reports, especially the UN. They're talking about, they're actually predicted, like when we enter to the pandemic, it's going to say gender-based crime is going to be on the rise because, of course, the aggressors now are locked up with their victims. That's just one part, of course. The other part is that every public effort is going for the pandemia and not for the vulnerable population, because
that's right.
it's always like that. The vaccines is always all the resources are for the ones who have, and the ones who doesn't, they're not going to be attended.
That's right. Those people, what it comes down to every single time is money, privilege, agency, access. Melanie, tell us about that in Canada, because in the United States, it's very bad. In Mexico, it's been very bad. How's it been in Canada?
Yeah, there's a serious problem here. One thing I have noticed is that there used to be, when cops would get called to a domestic, and this is during the pandemic, this is why I'm bringing it up, they used to take the aggressor out of the house, and there'd be a cool down period where they'd hold them within the station. Now, because of COVID, they're not holding anyone in the station. So they're taking an aggressor out of the house for an hour or two and then allowing that person to go right back into the environment. So it's constant, and it's really dangerous right now for the victims within the home, whether they be male or female. There's a really big problem with this right now.
So this response is not only just, that's not secondary victimization. That's basically kicking the can down the road and not dealing with the aggressor at all. You're making them mad. You're taking them out. You're deflating their ego. You're humiliating them, making them angrier, and then sending them back to the person that they usually take that out on.
Yes.
Right.
Good God. Okay. Well, that's a bigger problem.
So if you think about it, it's about space.
Yes.
There's a fight. There's a conflict over the space. We see that in the Oaxaca case that we have last year, that I think is very relevant for this type of violence, because the thing there was a case that we have in Oaxaca. So the victims was kicked out by the aggressor.
That's right. And
she lives basically homeless for 6 months.
No clothes, no money, and she was ridiculously ill. She was very ill.
Yeah, and she goes with the police, and the police lost the file. 6 months. This was a European guy living in Mexico, and she's an indigenous woman from Veracruz that lives in Oaxaca. And when she tried to come back to her house to take her stuff, that's when police start like, oh, what are you doing, right?
This is the problem. The problem is the law enforcement response. During the law enforcement response, they have broad discretion to decide who the aggressor is, and they make the call. And if you have the wrong responder, a responder of the wrong skin color without the right perspective, a responder of the wrong gender without the right perspective, or a responder who has zero empathy anymore, as what we call that, that's the fake out, the compassion fatigue, which is really just being, jaded and not caring. If you have someone like that, they're going to go with the person that they like, not about the person who's actually been hurt or the person who's suffering harm or the person without agency. They're going to go with the person that they like. And that person's going to get rewarded and protected and helped. And the person who is maybe potentially suffering the violence, they're going to be punished and they're going to be left on the sidelines. And this is a story that happens in Mexico. It's a story that happens in the United States. And from what you just said, it happens in Canada as well. This is
absolutely.
Talk to us a little bit more about that and law enforcement's discretion in Canada, because I think a lot of people have this idea that there's not a lot of crime in Canada and everything's really fine because of the way that it's not reported there.
That's right. You're not going to see any of this on the mainstream media. They're not talking about domestic homicides or domestic assaults or anything of that matter. And even when someone does try to reach out and raise awareness of this during the pandemic, it's just pushed to the side. And in Ontario right now, we're being there's a law that's being passed that we're going to be basically not allowed to do anything if you're not vaccinated. So there is a large demographic of people who aren't vaccinated, and some of that demographic is the vulnerable demographic. So they are still going to be locked inside their houses and not allowed to go out if this law is to be passed. When the police, I find in my experience, or the things that I continuously see, is that the police often make a decision before they've even got to the house. There's something that has been flagged, or they know of somebody, or they have a bad taste for the female in the situation, and they've made the decision of what they're going to do before they even hear any side of the story.
I really want to bring on this point because we're working a case right now, you and I, we're working a case that has some of these dimensions. Won't mention it, where it's at or what's going on with it. But there's a problem in general with law enforcement. Instead, when they're responding to a domestic violence call, they will actually, like they're supposed to do, they will do a check on the address to see the history of calls. They'll do a check to see who the person there maybe have been arrested. But in doing so, they're going to pull up the photos of the driver's license of the people. And if they see it's an attractive female, they may get a greater response. You'll see officers putting on cologne, changing their shirts, so that when they go there, they can respond, pretend to be the hero. And when they leave, they start texting inappropriately to the female. They give out their personal number. They start behaving in ways that are completely unprofessional. And the opposite is also true. If they don't believe that they get there and the female isn't attractive and they're not interested in them, then they treat them very badly. That happens in the United States. It's an epidemic. It's an epidemic problem with the way that law enforcement responds to these cases. Can you tell us about that in Canada?
It's a serious problem here. I've seen it firsthand myself with officers who will send a text on the laptop that is within the cruiser. So it's not even their personal phone.
They're not even trying to hide it, right?
Not even trying to hide it. And there was a sexual assault call that came in, and the one officer immediately just said, "Is she hot?"
Yeah.
Is she hot? So that's going to change the perspective of, how fast they're going to get there and what they're going to do for this person.
Not only the perspective, it changes their focus and attention. They're not interested at all in the context of the victim or helping them. They're interested in seeing if they can they can get there with their badge and their gun and their shield and their cuffs, and they can get a date. One of the things to watch out for with cops like this is they always wear the shirt that's a couple sizes too small. So they're really tight. They're really ripped. They're always got their cologne on. They're there they're in between Chippendales dancer exercises or something.
And I think this speaks about what are we talking here, because we tend, when we speak about this, personalized, this is the intention of these guys, but we need to talk about it like a structural problem because they don't know this woman.
It's not an individual issue.
It's because she's a woman, so they see women in certain manner. And that's a structural, that's a predatory behavior.
That's right.
It's not like, I will have a girlfriend. No, it's about this is a vulnerable woman, and now I can be predatory. And that woman that is vulnerable to the guy who's, attacking her, is vulnerable to the police, is vulnerable to the public media. And that's what people, especially I will say that forensic investigators don't see that aspect. They don't understand gender-based crime. They just think it's inside the mind of the people instead of the behavior in the system that we create.
Well, let's back up, because I want to break this down. I think it's really good what you were saying before, Melanie, about on the way in the cruiser. So on the way in the cruiser, what they're doing is they are checking. They're making a decision about who the aggressor is before they get there, based on a bunch of stuff. And they'll start texting each other. They'll start sharing information with each other. All that stuff, they make a record of it.
Yeah.
And this kind of behavior is why they fight tooth and nail not to share what should be properly handed over during any criminal proceeding. And it should be reviewed by supervisors. And so I really like what you had to say there. So
say hi to Nina.
Hi,
Nina, she's an expert on gender crimes in Mexico City.
That's right.
And she's making a comment.
She says this happens to Mexican women reporting any crime, not only domestic violence. They check our WhatsApp profiles, and everything depends on the looks. There is no question that that's true. And I want to go.
Nina, saludos.
Yes, thank you.
Gracias,
Nina.
Gracias, Nina.
I want to say I want to go back to the comment that Aurelio said. I want to make this very
exactly the same. Mexico City.
Yeah,
this is Mexico City. She's an expert in Mexico City.
Exactly.
Thanks,
right.
Nina.
Thank you so much for the perspective. The reality is that this is not an individual problem. This is built into the structure of the way that police officers view the people that they're supposed to be helping. It's the way that men are viewed, the men view women.
Yes, culture.
It's a cultural problem
that is sustained by the system itself. I mean,
Yes.
there's rules, there's way. I mean, it's why politicians are seeing something that is that bad as domestic violence or not intervene. I mean, that will get them some votes or stuff. I mean, it will be cool to do something, right?
Except for that it won't.
Except that it's not in their beliefs to do this, because they don't see that as a real crime.
Right.
Because it's like, man, my wife do the same. That's the problem. Like, they don't actually see. They see this as a private matter instead of seeing as a public stuff.
That exact language gets used by district attorneys and police officers. Well, that's between a husband and a wife.
because they want to maintain their own
That's between
stuff.
a father and their children.
Uh-huh.
That's an interfamily matter.
The priest and their
That's the same. It's the same rationale
It's the same.
for ignoring priests doing terrible things inside the
intimacy is
church.
being used to exploit people.
Oh my gosh, that's really true. Melanie, thoughts on that? Because I feel like you have a better voice than me on this.
It's the exact same here.
There's not a lot of difference. I mean, that's the
There's
So
not.
the NAFTA goes further.
oh, yeah. So NAFTA really has
Really
screwed all of us in the terms of.
Well, that's what the Zapatistas said when
I know.
NAFTA is going to be 94, when NAFTA is going to be, signing and all the things. They were saying we're
Nope.
going to become
Our own
like
thing.
a United States extension of the United States,
That's
a
right.
wasteland.
That's right.
That was 94.
Jeez.
I find that people are surprised when I start talking about these things that I've witnessed myself in Canada, because it's just that,
Yes,
no, it can't be like that there.
Exactly.
Everyone's so nice. There's no
we're
crime.
nice.
Everything's dealt with perfectly. The RCMP are there for you. They have your rights and they have your back all the time.
Yeah, they have great
Okay,
PR.
well,
is what they have.
That's exactly what it is, because it's not any different here. It's happening every day.
And you could say that it's there's just one or two bad apples, and I think no, they're all participating in this, and that's again why
Absolutely.
they fight so hard not to release information when you ask for it about the internal communications. I've witnessed officers taking pictures with their personal cell phones and video at scenes that they have no business taking. Like if it's a very attractive female who's a victim, you'll see officers lining up to walk up and just kind of take a picture with their private phone discreetly and slip it in their pocket. But it's all recorded on another officer's body cam. And it's like, what are you taking a picture before? It's not evidence. What are you doing? It's for them later.
Yeah.
And they're going to contact her later. It's going to be inappropriate. This happens so much. And this is not secondary victimization. This is just part of the process of the response. What do you call that, Aurelio? What would
basically, when we talk about, primary victimization, we talk about the violence that the victim occurs.
That's right.
And then secondary is what occurs when victim go with the family, go with a friend, or go with the institutions.
Yeah.
How they respond to that creates another layer of victimization. Right. And they can be a third or victimization that is about how public react to that. Yes. That's the basis of all these things. If the public reacts like you're saying, exactly like, no, we're nice people, that doesn't happen here. Or in the United States, like, oh man, violence is violence.
Or worse, it's she was asking for it.
Yeah. Or in Mexico, like that's not even a thing, because we already in that position. That's aggravates the problem because creates the idea of impunity and normalize that. And that's the problem of secondary and the third type of victimization.
Right. That's a really important thing you just said, which is the normalization of this kind of response. Acting as though it's okay for police officers to behave improperly, to break the law, to violate victims' rights, and to ignore their trauma and their needs. Not just we haven't even got to the formal response. What we're dealing with is when the officers are responding, they're responding as predators. Yeah. They're not responding as people there to help. Yeah. And let me ask you this very pointed question to both of you. In Mexico, are they doing this? Are they aware of the fact that they're doing this and they don't care? Or they are not aware of it at all and it's just so baked into who their personality, they think they're entitled to it?
I will give you my perspective. It's very radical. I believe the police works. Police actually works for the actual purpose that are being created. Police has never been created for actually do justice and stuff like that. If you look at the history, is
please don't do that.
The arm faction of the power.
Yeah.
It's not like the citizens go, oh, we need police. Yeah. We need more police. No, this is like, man, we have private property and we need to
protect it.
We need to protect it.
The wealthy.
Exactly. So it's not in their personalities. It's not in their minds. It's in the actual foundation of the institution that we create. If we can, the only thing we can imagine is police. We cannot imagine other measure of security or public policies.
Or other responses.
Because that's what the media told us. So we live in this world where, police is not doing their work. Yeah, they're actually doing it. Yeah. The politicians are not doing their work. They're actually doing it. They're protecting the interest of the mainstream.
Right.
So that's my, of course, radical.
And in the United States,
leftist
I don't think
position.
I actually don't think that's that radical because in the United States, the police come from slave patrols. They were there to protect the interests of the white slave owners and their property being the slaves. One of the things I learned very recently was that you could take, the reason that slavery was so profitable is not just the manpower itself, but you could take mortgages out on slaves because they were property. You could take a mortgage out of them like a house. So that in their mind, this was money running away. So the police were created to bring them back. And that mindset, that white supremacist mindset is baked into a lot of law enforcement still in different parts of the country and in the attitudes. So that's the first part.
And that's why you can meet really good cops with really good intentions, because most of the cops I know are like that. But at the end, the majority, the statistics go to that, because that's the actual flow of the river.
Well, they're not able to make their own decisions. They have policies and procedures, and they follow orders. Even that their policies and procedures are written for us to make us feel like they're doing something, but they take orders from they'll take orders from the mayor, will tell the chief, and the chief will tell the supervisor will tell the detective or the officer.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with their policies. Give us your thought on that. What's the background of the police there for you guys? What is the idea that they're created for, and how effective they are?
Well, I want to say that in my opinion, that's my opinion. From what I've seen and experienced, I would say that they know exactly what they're doing. This isn't something that like, I don't think it's gone over to entitlement. I think entitlement is there, but I also think it's on their conscious mind. I think there is a way that they are doing this through the recruiting portion of it. And I've been through the recruiting portion of it myself. And the outcome with my ethical training and me being who I am, they said that I was not malleable enough. And that was concerning to me, not being malleable enough. And my ethics were too high. Being told that I wouldn't be able to join the service because of that was a little concerning. So I do think that they are looking for that type of person still. And I think that's conscious on their mind. And that's why it's going to continue to be that way. There are a few good cops. Yes, I'll admit that. I know a few
all
really
the time.
Good cops.
I work with good cops every day.
The problem is they struggle in their job every day because they're going against the majority. Their life is at risk every day because they won't comply. And they're seeing that things need to change. But that's my opinion on what you asked. I think
one of the things that backs that up, you're absolutely right. And I think one of the things that backs that up is what we're seeing with the response of officers who are killing themselves as a result of Capitol riots. There are officers who have identity that's shaped by machismo, aggression, and alignment with very right-wing extremism. And when officers do things that don't align with those public right-wing views, they get harassed and attacked by other officers. And that kind of failure to support strips an officer of their identity as being part of the blue. And that's who they are. And when you take that away from them, that's when they're the most vulnerable. That's when they're most likely to hurt themselves. So I think your insight is not wrong. And I think it goes very well with Aurelio's.
And Nina's making a great point. This is also a business.
Oh, yes.
Human trafficking is a business. Vulnerable population is always a business.
Yep. So this is another thing. So a lot of police officers work above board as security at clubs, at bars, at malls and everything, and they'll wear their uniform. They'll have their cop car there, and they're working privately. A lot of them do that. But the other problem is when someone who is involved in trafficking, whether it's drug trafficking, human trafficking, or the subtype of sex trafficking, they're going to hire police as their escorts. They're going to hire police as their security illegally. Obviously, that's not legal to do that. But when we bust these rings, we find that law enforcement has long been either moving them around, protecting them from consequences, or being paid not to do anything, and therefore benefiting from it. And then I'm going to disagree with you just a tiny bit, Melanie. I'll say there is a tremendous amount of entitlement because the recruitment process grooms the wrong type of people to be in the work. And the wrong type of people seek it out, and they are not screened at all. And they should be. That would make for better law enforcement. But the other thing that Aurelio said is that basically law enforcement is not the only response. Every time I hear about, crime's going up, we need more police on the streets. You think adding more violent people with guns on the streets is going to solve a violence problem?
No, that's what the rich people say. Oh, the pandemic. We were talking about that. Like when the pandemic start kicking, there's these conversations about now with this, people are going to lose their jobs. They're going to have money problems, and they're going to become criminal
because poverty makes people criminal.
No. Lack of money, lack of agency creates vulnerable population.
That's right.
And then with that creates predatory
behavior
opportunities for people who are actually doing it.
What a great segue.
And the predatory behavior can be with the people who are next to you, people who are actually poor too.
Okay.
But then you don't want to talk about the violence that are outside that community. That is being, when you have this amount of richness and privilege,
yes,
is always on the is costing someone else their lives. So this speech attracts investment in more guns, more whatever,
more ammunition, guns.
Exactly, because the idea is to create business out of the fear of people, of poor, vulnerable population.
The poor zombie mobs that are coming for you. But that's not it. What's going on? And this perfectly segues into the second half of our discussion on victimization, and that is the context of poverty, the context of and added vulnerability and abuse of vulnerable people who are just desperate to escape their circumstances. And this is a signal to the predators in the midst to actually go in and prey on those people through whatever means necessary. And one of the most common means nowadays is through dating apps, through WhatsApp, through Facebook, through Instagram, fake profiles, or even real profiles of people who are exploiting other people. And just without any remorse. I mean, it's so bad out there right now. It's not even funny. What I have observed in my casework, as I was saying before, is that I've seen a lot of Tinder cases where what you have are guys looking for vulnerable women or women looking for vulnerable guys. And the women are interested in, draining them dry of their resources. And men are interested in essentially a very aggressive sexual encounter that they don't understand is rape. That tell me your
they understand this.
Well, you think that?
No, they understand, of course.
I feel like Americans are very dumb about sex.
No. They understand that. One thing is the cognitive bias. I don't understand. I don't know. I'm stupid. And the other one is the ideological bias. When you're mistreating someone who's like trying to serve you food, that's a person. You give yourself permission to treat it bad because you're up and he's down.
I'm the one paying.
Exactly.
And I'm giving you money, therefore I own you and can do whatever I want.
You can tell when someone doesn't want to have sex. Because you interact with many people. It's not a cognitive stuff. They're not stupid. Okay. It's an ideological stuff. And that's why you can hear Americans talking in this very well-educated, like you create a distance with people like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what, no, you know exactly what's going on. I can see it in your face. You're just pretending. It's not that people doesn't, I know sex education and all the stuff, but most of if you lack of sex education, if you lack of other stuff, that's make you vulnerable again for not enjoying yourself. That's a problem. Do not have any sex education, but lack of sex education doesn't create rape.
We had this really great conversation, Aurelio and I, about 8 months ago. We were talking about the inability of people to essentially recognize, when you have somebody who's being educated about consent, especially male, and you're explaining consent to them, and they get very angry at the idea that they have to have a conversation about consent, because why would they not want that? Why would you not? And I was trying to talk to Aurelio about it. He said, look, why would you not want to have a conversation with somebody about sex before you had sex with them?
Yeah.
Because if you're not doing that, then you're only trying to set up a situation where they are vulnerable and you have agency and they can't say no. Because at the moment you start having this conversation about what people like and what they don't like and what they are willing to do and not, you're setting limits. And that's what you should be doing. That's what people do who are not trying to hurt each other.
Yeah.
But somebody who's a predator gets triggered. They get very angry by the conversation about consent, because it means now they're not going to be able to rape with impunity. And they don't want to call it rape. They want to call it dating. Give us your thoughts, Melanie. I'm talking too much. Give us your thoughts on this. It's very important.
I was just going to say that I think there's another psychological aspect to that, because there is like fear of abandonment within people, childhood trauma, all those things come up. So when you're in your adulthood and you're dating, these sorts of things are going to trigger, like you said. So I also think that it depends on the person who is the aggressor or the one pursuing, what's triggering within inside them too, why they get so angry to have a conversation that may end up in them being turned down, right? Rejection is a big problem. So then it makes them angrier. And if they already possess those qualities to push and they're going to continue to push because they're triggered and they're hurt by that, right? But I also find that online dating has been around forever, but within the pandemic,
Yes.
I find that people, before you're not meeting the person, but this sense of ownership has come over people, even just in a messenger, Facebook Messenger. A man will reach out, and if you don't respond, he will send 5 more texts.
Yeah.
And if you don't respond, you can see the anger. And then it's like, oh, you think you're too good. This is happening multiple times a day by different men.
Yes.
You know, and I'm sure vice versa. There's other things happening. It's not just men, but I'm just speaking from my experience. And it's this sense of, no, you're going to respond to me and I'm going to push it. And when you don't, I'm going to attack you psychologically and emotionally, just on a platform. It's gone.
Do you think it's, and I'd like to hear both of you on this. Do you think it's because the way that too many men think like this? I think that they see a picture and they think they're looking at a catalog of something they can order. And so when they don't get what they want, when they don't get that response, they think, I'm a man. I have asked for this. You putting a picture up there means you're available. Therefore, if you're not responding the way I want, I'm entitled to basically throw a lot of insults your way on even the most extreme. And that's where you get the incel attitude from. Yeah. Tell me what your thoughts are on that, Aurelio, really quick, and then I'll switch back.
Well, I think it's very important to address this in the historical moment we're living, because now we're having conversation about violence and, gender-based crimes and all this stuff. And what we see when they talk about consent, is about they're trying to teach men how to behave. No, not education about equal rights. It's like, don't touch that. Don't do that. By the way, I recommend everybody to see this BBC series. Is Fleabag. It's on Prime in Amazon. It's an amazing comedian.
Fleabag is very good.
Fleabag, I think, is the best comedian right now. She plays with that. She enters to this group of new masculinities or new men, they call it. And it's all about to not like, no, man, feminists can get angry if you talk about that. You see men very nervous around feminism, like, you cannot say nothing because if you say something like, man, it's because you don't understand basic stuff. It's not their problem. It's your problem that you're not understanding. If someone tells you, don't say that, it's not like, now my free speech. It's about the position they have, and they want to say, what can I say so I cannot be mistreated? That's what they're thinking. They're not thinking, maybe she's a person. No, so that's the problem. The problem is that we build a society when someone feel a little pushback, like, I don't have time to talk to you. I don't want, it's not that they're thinking they know, they talk with 100 women. They know that in 100 women, none of them are going to reply to them. So they know this, they're not stupid. They are the same. They just want to, I have the time, I will do it. Because if she get angry, I can actually get excited because I have her attention or whatever. It's because they dehumanize women. That's right. That's the ideological aspect of this.
Give us your thoughts on that, Melanie, because Aurelio unpacked a lot of stuff there, but it's really good. I think it's really helpful, but I would really love your perspective on it.
I think what I was going to say is I agree with what you said about like in a magazine or a catalog. With all of these online platforms, a woman will post a picture for whatever reason she's posting the picture for, and there's an immediate response from a male's perspective that, oh, you posted that, you must want me to talk to you, you must want me to pursue you, I am now entitled to reach out to you and you must respond. There's this urgency and this push that I keep seeing. Even if the woman responds, well, if she's being polite and says thank you, heaven forbid, because then, well, you started it. Now you're not going to talk to me, but you started it, so you were showing me interest. Well, no, I was saying thank you, but you can't even do that now because it shows the opposite of you're just trying to be polite, and it's taken as you're pursuing the person back.
You can't. There's no there, and that's what Aurelio's point, I think, is that we're not teaching people, and I think mostly men are having this problem about one, understanding the context and understanding the historical context, but two, understanding that they're dealing with another human being who has value, that even they have rights, yes, but this other person has rights too. They have, and they also are not required to give you the response that you want. You don't own them. They're not a commodity. They're a human being with their own situation. and the lack of understanding of that, the lack of awareness, the lack of patience, it is pathological almost.
And do you know what I find infuriating about this whole situation? Is that the woman, if they're bringing this up, talking amongst their friends or something like that, the response that I've seen is, well, then why don't you just come off the platforms? So we can't be on the platforms because of the men are choosing to behave like that. So we don't get to enjoy social media platforms because men are not behaving in a certain way. So it's our fault, right?
Because you need to stay in home. Is the public versus the private. Women are being it's because this is like, oh, if we start treating, if tomorrow everybody's deconstructed and start treating equal, and they understand the game we're playing still unfair. Yeah. And in 3 months, everybody will return to the same mentality because the game itself we're playing, this monopoly game, is unfair. So there's people who have too many chips, and at the end, those too many chips allows them to behave like that. Well, so it's not only a change of mentality. That's what the public discussion always goes, like into the deep of the mind of the individual. Don't go there because there is nothing. It's private. Go to the system. Go to the game.
The structure itself. Let's talk about. I want to get back to this. But Dora says many got nervous. They're afraid not to be politically correct. Women do not
not give a shit.
Do not give a shit. Yeah, they want to be heard and treated as human beings without finger pointing.
Yes,
it's an absolute struggle every day. I would like to, if you think it's appropriate, we had a conversation last night with somebody. That was really painful.
Yeah.
So Aurelio and I are in Las Vegas. I'm here to pick up some belongings and some evidence.
This is the proof. I mean,
we're in Las Vegas. We're at the plaza. We're staying at the plaza. Do not stalk us.
This can be anywhere, but we can say Las Vegas.
But it is Las Vegas.
Because it's impossible to have a frame like that outside Las Vegas.
Last night we were at Nacho Daddy.
Nacho.
That was good. But we went to
was open.
Yeah, we went to go play some blackjack. I like to play blackjack in the evening. It relaxes me. And I'm going to go from here to testify in a domestic violence trial, actually. But I was at the table, and Aurelio was there, and there was a young lady dealing. And I could tell there was something off. And I was watching. What we like to do is watch the groups of men that are drunk and angry. It's the fat male.
That's what we like.
That's what we like.
To watch drunk men.
We are not there to look at the
group of drunk men.
The backwards wearing baseball cap guys who are either super roided up or they are completely overweight and unaware of the damage they are causing to everyone around them in groups. And they are saying the foulest things to the women in their environment. Women who are guests, women who are dealing, women who are working, cocktail waitresses, doesn't matter. They are just the most offensive version of a human being you could imagine. And the girl who was dealing, she seemed like something was off. So I just said, hey, how's everybody treating you? It seemed, I don't know if it's me, but I'm just noticing a lot of anger, this post-pandemic anger, a lot of misbehavior. And I said a couple other things, but she just stopped right there. And she'd been dealing like crazy. She stopped. And I swear she almost like broke down and cried. Her shoulders slumped over and she goes, it's so bad. It's not even funny. I'm here to make money. Used to be you could at least expect black guys to treat you nicely because she was African-American. And she said, but everybody now is just trash. They're treating her like terrible. And she fears for her safety. The people working for the casinos are not qualified or they have criminal backgrounds. They don't respond. They don't protect the guests. They don't protect the girls. They're only interested in the money. And it's the perfect sort of editorial on society that we respect the money and the people who bring the money at the expense of the people trying to make money, just trying to survive. And you could tell it was eating her alive. And that's the thing and I think that's emblematic of what's going on pretty much everywhere and what's been going on.
She says, even the black guys are doing it now.
Yeah.
And I told Brent, like, you realize
that what she's saying
how these stereotypes that we have, like all these coming here, like, no, it's the white men who are doing this.
The white men.
All the time. Yeah. And now we have, even the black guys are doing it now.
Yeah, it was really demoralizing and really awful to see her sort of break down. She stopped play for like 5 minutes to talk to us. And then when she continued, she was just trying to go through it. But I felt awful for even bringing it up. But I just saw this human being who was in this environment of male toxicity and male cruelty, really entitled cruelty. That was my. Can you react to that, Melanie? I know that sounds, maybe I'm jumping you with this. I don't mean to do that. it was really a visceral reaction I had to her response. It took me aback quite a bit because she was very human.
What I was thinking when you were talking about it is if she even went to complain about that, if she went up the chain in management, it would probably be met with, well, you'll get better tips if you just flirt back, or, you know,
no, she told us that directly.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
She told us that. She told us she was told not to complain. And when she talked to the security guys, there, so many of them are on probation. Because they have staffing problems. They got so many security people on probation who are convicted criminals that they actually will not respond to calls because they're afraid of having an interaction where it exposes their probation status. They'll walk around and be nice and be polite, but they're not going to intervene if somebody's being hurt, especially if it's an employee.
Yeah.
And that's the perfect sort of editorial on what we value. Mm-hmm. And this goes right back to domestic violence because these guys, these are fathers, brothers, they're husbands, they have children, you know, they have mothers, and they are the shittiest version of human beings I've ever seen. And it's worse than I've ever seen.
That's why they behave like that, because they have mothers and sisters and stuff, because they treat them exactly like that.
The same.
It's like, it's a game. It's the same game. It's not like, oh, they're very good, and then now they have this. No, it's the game we all play.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, I've seen an increase in some things as well, where I do some security work as well, and there's other female security officers, and it's like there's this right to say whatever you want, whereas before, you know, guys might talk amongst themselves or say something like that, but they'll just outright say like, oh, I'd love to, you know, get taken to the ground by you, or they're making these offside comments and then laughing, and there's nothing done about it, because it's okay to say that. It's okay to sexualize you at your job, or you know, not take you seriously.
I think it's worse than that, because it's not just sexualizing. What they're doing, what that phrase is essentially they're inviting a context where they're inviting a violent context. What they'd like is to do something violently sexual. That's what they're expressing. And they think that somehow is associated with arousal and attraction. And for them, it is. Let's listen to what Daleen says. Daleen Wright says, we had a man at work say very inappropriate sexual things, but when I talked to the boss, I was told that's just what it is. It's not a big deal. Exactly. Because they're a customer and they have money. Yep. Yeah,
that's actually my sister.
Oh, it is. Hey.
So
nice to meet you, Daleen.
She actually told me about that situation, and it was horrible. The things that this man was saying to her, and then it was just like, oh, well, that's how he is. You know, just turn away, walk away. It's fine. It's okay. It's just what he does. Please that is happening everywhere.
Please normalize it and don't respond. Just let them do it.
And that's education.
Just allow it.
That's education also. To live as a grown-up and to be told that your boss, if he's telling you that, that's education. We are getting education all day long. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, it's not only that you get education when you go to school, when you're in work and that happens and there's no consequences. That's education for the guy, for you, for the boss, for the profits. So that's why.
So you understand your place.
Yeah.
But that brings us to the secondary victimization part, because now we have to understand that we've identified that there's a problem with the structure. We've identified a problem with the game. We've identified a problem with the way that we show the value of people or the lack of their value because of money or agency. So the law enforcement response is supposed to protect the vulnerable. That's on paper what it's supposed to be. And the reality is, what we're finding in our casework is they're not interested in doing that at all. I have found this over and over and over again. We're coming full circle back to the original point, which is that the law enforcement response is of people who are playing the same game. They're involved in the same thing. So they're there to minimize the consequences for the person who's doing the oppression, for the person who's doing the abuse, because any consequences to that person is going to require them to fight someone with agency, to fight someone with privilege. And either they don't want to do it because they might lose, or the bigger problem is they don't want to do it because they're just like them.
Yeah.
Tell me your thoughts on that, Melanie. I'd love to hear that.
Well, I was just going to say the questioning alone that cops. Yes. Okay.
Let's hear
just 1 second. The questioning when officers have been called to the scene of rape victims, I've seen firsthand, and it is accusatory. And the victim has just been victimized, perhaps more than once, and they are asking questions that are re-victimizing that person. and they are falling apart. And they're also blaming them. I've heard a lot of, like, well, what were you drinking and what were you wearing? And then there was a superior officer that once told a woman that they weren't even going to look into it because there weren't enough witnesses. So there weren't enough witnesses at the sexual assault for them to even go forward with an investigation.
That's ridiculous. So the issue is when someone has suffered a trauma, whether it's domestic violence, sexual assault, or some other sort of attack, the first response, and it's in their protocols, is that they're supposed to get there and make sure everyone's safe and doesn't need medical or mental health attention, because it's not possible to conduct an interview with someone who's just been traumatized and get reliable information out of them. It's not. Yes. Your first concern has to be for them. And are you okay? What do you need? And then to make sure, even if they say, I don't need anything, no, bring a professional out to evaluate them, to make sure that they're okay. Because people, like you just said, they've learned not to seek help because they know that they're not going to get help. So they learn to mask it. They learn to normalize it so that they can carry that indignity away and not have further indignity of not getting the help that they actually need. So they pretend be strong, toughen up, walk it off. That's the notion that's going through the cop's head. Why are you acting so bad? You don't look hurt. You look fine. Even though inside they've been beaten, they've been traumatized, they've been hurt so badly, and they just need help. And the very people they call are unwilling to provide it because they can't. Even if they saw some injury, I don't think they'd actually do anything. It's to that point these days.
It's theatrics.
Let's talk about that. The theatrical nature of the response. What do you mean by that?
The theatrics is like there's violence and we're doing something about it.
We're here. We're here in uniform.
I mean, we go to the house and we do some questions. We're doing an investigation.
This is a real.
How are you going to do an investigation if you don't understand how gender works and vulnerability and how crimes or how violence works? This is just theatrics most of the time because it's to create statistics, to create the idea of being observed. But at the end, that's why we're living in the same violence over and over.
Yeah, the secondary victimization part is very real in that regard. Melanie, you had something.
I was just going to say that there's another aspect to that where you just made the comment like you don't look hurt, right? I can't see anything. You don't look hurt. There are so many women that won't reach out for help at all, and they're emotionally and psychologically abused, and that is just as damaging as a physical altercation, but they don't look hurt, so they don't get the attention, right? They can cover it up and nobody wants to help them, and then they're just re-victimized over and over and over. And
Dora's saying that some everywhere, but in Latin America, it's even worse. Women are always victimized and blamed, and in Latin America, it's bad enough that they can be physically hurt and damaged or even killed, and it's not investigated. Yeah, that's the femicide problem.
And that's the part of the intersectionality we need to talk about it, because of course being a woman is you're part of a vulnerable group, but that's the other thing. If you start talking in terms of indigenous women,
yes,
or women with some type of disability or physical disability,
oh my gosh, yes,
that will be even worse. So because we are the systems of oppression that exist, yes, creates different scenarios for each person. So basically, we actually live in different dimensions. Like I cannot understand. I can research. I can read. I can talk with them, but actually, I cannot understand completely the experience of the victim that we have in Oaxaca, or the victim we have in. It can be more related to the victim that we have in California, for instance.
Oh, yeah.
I can understand better the white woman in California than I can understand a indigenous woman in my own country.
Yeah,
and I think we need to acknowledge those dimensions, that we live in different worlds. The experience is totally different. You're right, Dora.
And not just that, but it's a function of the fact that there's no attempt to identify this problem, understand this problem, or educate police about it. Worse than that, let's go back to the theatrical part. The theatrical part is that they want to pretend that they're doing a response. They want to pretend that they're there, that the badge, the gun, the handcuffs, the car, the lights, the siren, all that means that a real response has taken place. They are the only real response, and everything that they have done is pristine and by the book. And therefore, if they find nothing, then there was nothing. When in fact, they are deprived of the knowledge or information or education to actually investigate properly, to even understand what their own protocols are. That's the thing that I see, and it gets me the most frustrated, because I'm constantly testifying in context where I'm being told that I have to accept the law enforcement investigation as though it is sacrosanct, when everything has been done wrong, when the investigation hasn't even been done, when the evidence hasn't been collected, when there hasn't been, when the victim hasn't been helped.
Yeah.
That's the thing that really bothers me a lot. Melanie, you were going to say something?
Nope.
Nope.
I
No.
was just listening.
Jeez. Yeah, sorry. What Nina says, no gender perspective, no investigation, period. Exactly. It's not possible to conduct a competent investigation unless you understand the dimensions of the crime. I'll give you an example. Aurelio and I are working on a case together out of Salinas, California.
Salinas, yeah.
Yeah, and one of the it's like 3 or 4 cases that involve an allegation of connectivity inside of a drug cartel shooting people, whatever. The point is, when law enforcement responded to the scenes of these crimes, all these white guys responding to this 95% Hispanic community in California, and all the people they're responding to have Spanish as their native language and speak very bad English, or no English at all. And they have no translators and no ability to go door to door to talk to to look for witnesses, let alone talk to the actual victims in the house to find out what actually happened. And they don't even seek it out. To them, it's just like, these are just immigrants killing each other, or illegal immigrants killing each other. So that's another dimension we haven't actually mentioned, which is that when you have somebody who's in the country who either is non-native to that country, or they're an immigrant, legal or illegal, don't speak the language, don't have the cultural literacy to ask for help, or to feel like they can ask for help.
Mexicans are natives from California.
Yeah, that's true.
United States take that land.
That's right.
We are natives from that.
That's right.
That's what you remember.
The
Costeños.
The Costeños.
Yeah, and then now, no, what are you doing here?
Yeah. So the Norteños from the north, the Sureños from the south, and Costeños are people on the coast. They were from California, and they were dispossessed first by the Spanish and then by the United States.
So what are you doing here? Yeah, we were here.
Yeah, we were always
we
here.
Were here.
And what are you doing here?
What are you not speaking English? Like maybe that's a language that comes from another place and hurt.
Yeah, we don't teach that history very well in the United States, or we do, or we teach it like, it was necessary because they weren't managing their resources. But this is a point. It's what it comes down to is how law enforcement and the justice system itself views the people that it's supposed to be helping.
Yeah.
That's the structural problem. And what we want to do is we want to create a new generation of forensic investigators and forensic examiners who are capable of understanding the intersectionality, the transdisciplinary requirement to actually have the human rights perspective, the gender perspective, to understand these things going in when they're examining their cases. Even if they can't do it perfectly, understand that these are issues and understand how to make sure that when they're doing an investigation, they aren't missing vital contextual evidence to teach them what's really going on. A lot of people want to take programs and learn things and go watch movies or watch television or take classes because they want to understand crime. What I have learned is they really don't. They don't want to understand crime. They have an image of themselves as a crime fighter, as some kind of hero, or some kind of revenger who's going to battle crime, instead of first understanding what's actually going on.
Yeah.
Tell me about that a little bit, because we've had this conversation so many times.
No, that's we're in a crisis. I think we need to put it like that. We're in a crisis in terms of violence, and we're gonna start having a lot of immigration because the natural resources, of course, are having a crisis.
They're being depleted. Right?
So then if we don't understand the dimensions of violence, if we have people who run the streets with guns and badges or whatever, and they don't understand this perspective, this is just militarization of the public
They're gonna mow down
life.
Yeah.
So what we need is forensic people, police, lawyers, understand basic science that's being built from the 1920s to this time, like critical theory and human rights perspective, of course, gender, everything. We are behind not only 20 years, we're behind 100 years.
More than that.
How we apply social sciences in forensic investigation, 100 years, because we're still talking in terms of the English positivism about cause and effect instead of understanding systems and social life and culture. And for me, that was the most incredible thing when I started interacting with criminologists, how they were so in 1900s.
Sorry.
So, yeah.
Sorry.
I mean,
well,
I mean,
Well, what I want to do
no,
is
you were in 1950s.
I was in 1957.
Yeah,
I want to
like,
make this
yeah,
very
exactly,
clear. Let's be
so,
very
yeah,
clear.
yeah.
Not the 57. I
Like,
was getting close
yeah,
to the
yeah.
60s. What I want to say is this, Melanie, you have had a chance to work in the residency program that we started through the Forensic Criminology Institute, you and two other people. It's going to be a 6-month program. You're now starting your second case. Can you tell everyone a little bit about your experiences, what you've learned about the human rights perspective, the gender perspective, while in this program? What has it done for you to change your perspective or make it better or make me look dumber, whatever.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's a rich,
That's me.
This is my moment. This is my moment.
This is your moment.
second.
This is your safe space.
Sister, record this.
Sister, put your phone
Put
on.
your phone now.
What I have learned is that I knew nothing. I knew nothing about this perspective. I was, like I said before, I was in the recruiting process. I had a vision of law enforcement and I had it on a pedestal. I had an idea of what it would look like to work a case from a law enforcement perspective. Coming into this, I saw the lack of documentation that is in a case. So when we're working a case, I now see a case from start to finish.
That's right.
And Please Bring Me Home, we don't have that. We don't get casework turned over to us. We have to do our own investigation because that is all.
Fight them for information, right?
We have to fight them for information. So this was my first time seeing a case in its entirety. And I would look through the case and try to create a timeline or something, and I'm missing vital information that seems like common sense. There's no information about the victim. I'm trying to understand, how did this person end up here? How did they meet this person? Why are they in this environment? What is their childhood trauma? Was there any mental health struggle? Nothing.
Who else lives in the house with them?
Right. None of this existed. So to see I think of things from a very different point of view now when it comes to any sort of crime that has been committed, because I'm able to see from both perspectives on a deeper level, which I wasn't aware of before.
So what would you recommend for people who are trying to get from where you were to where you are right now and where you want to go?
Well, that's an interesting question.
Well,
I didn't even know how to do that myself
That's very
until I
good,
started taking courses. I had no idea.
by the way, we did the same thing, just so we're very clear. We didn't know either.
No, I had no idea. I didn't know that I was going to end up going in this direction because in Canada, we don't have this. I was looking for profiling or different courses that specialize within that. And because it's a privatized situation, it doesn't exist. You can do criminology and things like that. But for what I was looking for, I had to come to the States. And that's when I started taking the courses with Turvey and starting to learn profiling and things like that and crime scene reconstruction. And then going forward with the residency and then the master's program to be able to understand the human rights perspective and all of these different concepts. In Canada, it's not here.
Well, you have it on paper. The United Nations has good penetration in Canada, not so good in the States, and good penetration in Latin America. It's there on paper. And at the state level, it's pretty good on paper in the United States. What you have is the people responsible in the criminal justice system have a very negative view of human rights and civil rights. And so they do not actually police or govern or administer justice from that perspective. It makes them very upset. It's like telling a man not to talk about a woman's skirt or touch their ass in public. Like it's, oh my God, now I'm canceled. Yeah, because you're doing shitty things. They don't want to see that because they know they're part of the problem. So I can do. Let's see. We got a user who says, and there is no program like this out there. Trust me, I have searched. The master's program is very much needed. And that's one of the things we're going to end it here. If anyone is interested in taking our master's program, you go ahead and scan the URL in the photo, in the picture. If you're interested in more information about it, we'll provide you with a link where you can answer some questions and get some information. But the goal for us is to create, again, a new generation of forensic investigators and examiners who are capable.
It's Jill.
Oh, it's Jill. Hey, Jill, it's you.
It's because we cannot see your name.
Sorry, Jill. We couldn't see your name. And I understand your need for anonymity. I don't feel safe either anymore. But the point is, this is a place. This is a program designed for people who are going to be addressing social justice issues in the next millennia, for the next 50 years, the next 100 years. Yeah. We want to set that stage because I don't feel like it's getting enough attention or any attention. So it's for investigators, examiners, attorneys, activists, people who are journalists, people who are interested in really understanding crime and really understanding what intersectionality is and means, and the kinds of evidence that need to be examined and the kinds of assessments that can be done to make things better. Thoughts on that, Aurelio, before we go?
No, nothing. I think we should do this more. It's interesting conversations, and we need to continue to have this dialogue so we can address not only the problems, but the perspective. I think the perspective is very hard to understand only reading, the material. You need to actually apply in the reality. That's when you see their value, because when you start talking about gender and you start talking about human rights, vulnerable, intersectionality, sounds like this sounds like big words.
Yeah,
that doesn't have any application. This is for college or whatever. No, it's not. This, of course, it is, because that's where these things come from. But when you see it apply, that's when you start seeing how you can deconstruct crime and then put it again, and you see a new stuff.
And let me tell you what it brought for me, and then I want to leave Melanie with the last word. For me, this perspective has brought me back to a place where I feel like I'm doing some good by deconstructing the system, by deconstructing the way that the criminal justice system's response, and elevating the victim to a place where we say, okay, what do they need? How do we help? Instead of just trying to find a way to find fault or to find blame, trying to figure out what the system is supposed to be doing to make things better, to make things helpful. Because I believe there's a place for good government. I believe there's a good place for government to distribute resources to help the people that need it. That's the position of government, to be that effort, to be that agency on behalf of people who don't have it. But it only is possible if there are other people working in the justice system holding those in authority to account and understanding these issues. It really helped me fall back in love, I think, with my profession over the last couple of years, the last 2 or 3 years. Melanie, your final thoughts. Give us your final thoughts.
I'm so thankful to be part of it. I'm learning so much, and I feel like I am going to be able to help. I feel like there is going to be a difference being made, and I'm really hoping that Canada starts to open up a little bit and is more accepting of this. It would be something very beneficial everywhere. And I finally feel like there's going to be help for people, for victims, that people are actually going to get the support they need. And I'm so happy to be a part of all of it. So I thank you guys.
No, well, not today. What we like to say is it's not us who will do it. It's the students of our students. Yeah. So you have your work cut out for you.
I know. All
right.
I'm ready for it.
Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your perspective and your time.
We're gonna thank you for the people who are joining us,
and for the questions,
like Dora, Jill, Nina, Jill,
especially Nina. Thank you so much, Nina.
Thank you, Nina, for your comments, and we are gonna talk with you about that exactly. Right. And we're very happy to be here, and we're gonna say goodbye because we need to do stuff.
We need to go back to work.
We need to do stuff.
We need to do stuff, and then we're gonna try to do this a lot more often.
By the way, yesterday a drunk guy approached to us.
Yeah, he did.
And he make a bet with his friend, and he approached to us and tell us, I just want to know, we have a bet. Are you undercover cops or undercover lovers?
And I was going to say it, and then Aurelio said it before me.
I say both, man.
Both.
That's what I said.
FBI undercover lovers.
And the guy was like so happy. He was high-fiving.
Started high-five to the crowd. And that was our biggest and lowest moment in Las Vegas.
I'm sure we can do better.
Let's try it today.
Anyway, again, thank you so much, Melanie, for your time.
Stuff gambling.
Exactly.
Maybe, I don't know. Jim.
I told you I was gambling. I did. I confess completely to that. I love blackjack. All right, you guys. Thank you so much, everybody who participated today. Melanie, let's do this again in a couple of weeks. All right.
Put it on the box. Always a pleasure. All right.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye, guys.